Hello petals, my name is Analyse. I am a womb witch, a Rahani energy teacher, and a plant alchemist. Under Unfurling Alchemy, I guide women in reconnecting with their power, awakening their essence, and step into sovereignty. In these episodes, I am going to approach topics around womb mysteries, energy healing, and cyclic living. Hello petals, in this episode I want to talk to you about what it means to be at a threshold and why you cannot think your way through it. There is a particular kind of moment that I see again and again in the women that I work with, and it's not a crisis, it's not a breakdown, it's something quieter than that. Something that creeps in slowly one day until you cannot ignore it anymore. It is the moment where you realize that the life that you have been living no longer quite fits who you are becoming. Not that it was wrong, not that you made horrible bad decisions and choices, but the life that you have built, it made sense. It was logical, it was responsible, it was maybe even enjoyable, it ticked all the right boxes, and for a long time it was enough. But something inside you has shifted. Something inside you has grown, has changed, has awoken in a way that means that the container you have been living in no longer holds you comfortably. And you can feel it in the restlessness, in the quiet dissatisfaction that you cannot always name, in the sense that you are standing at the end of something without knowing what. And that is what a threshold is. And the reason I want to talk to you about this is because most women I know who are at thresholds do the same thing when they arrive there. They try to think their way through it. They analyze, they make lists, they research, they talk it through endlessly with people around them. They try to logic their way to the answer. First, they try to ignore it, and then the feelings get louder and louder and louder until it becomes undeniable, and then they look for the rational solution to what essentially is not a rational experience, because on paper things still look great. So it doesn't work. Not because you're not intelligent enough, not because you aren't resourced enough, but because a threshold is not a problem to be solved. It is a passage to be moved through. And those two things require completely different approaches. A problem has a solution. You gather information, you access your options, you make decisions, and then you move forward. It's clean, it's logical, it's effective. And that approach works so beautifully in so many aspects of your life. But a threshold is different. A threshold is the place where who you have been meets who you are becoming. It is that in between. And that meeting cannot be rushed or thought through or optimized. It requires something else entirely. It requires you to slow down enough to actually feel what is true for you. To stop outsourcing the answers to your mind or to other people around you. But to come back into your body and listen to what is actually happening underneath all the noise. And that can be so deeply uncomfortable, especially for the women who have spent years living primarily from their head or into their masculine energy, from the logic and the analyzing and the doing and the achieving. Because slowing down may just be something completely unknown. It may also feel like falling behind, or feeling dangerous or indulgent, or at least unproductive. And not having the answers feel unbearable, because when you have been building your entire sense of security around being the person who has the answers, it's unbearable to not have them. But this is what I have been witnessing and again. It's the women who try to rush through a threshold by thinking harder, by doing more, or nearly always end up making the decisions from that same space they were already standing. They kind of like just reorganize the furniture in their existing life rather than actually crossing into a new one. Because the mind can only work with what it already knows. It can only offer you options from within the paradigm that it is already living in. The new life, the one that actually fits who you are becoming, is not accessible from the mind alone. It requires a different kind of knowing, a deeper one, the kind that lives in the body, in the gut, in the womb. in the quiet place beneath all the thinking, where you actually know what is true for you, even when you cannot yet articulate it. And even if right now you don't quite know how to do this. I have been at thresholds in my own life, the kind where everything on the outside looked so fine, and where everything in the inside just wanted to scream and was quietly dismantling. And what I now know that I didn't know then is that the most important thing I could have done was not think harder. It was to get still. To stop performing a certain way, to stop trying to arrive at the answer, and instead let myself actually be in the not knowing long enough to hear what was underneath. Because the not knowing wasn't a problem. The not knowing was the actual doorway. When you are at a threshold and you don't know what comes next, that is not failure. And it's not a failure of intelligence, of clarity, or of self-awareness. This is exactly what a threshold feels like and should feel like. It is supposed to feel uncertain. It is supposed to feel like standing in the dark without a map, because you are in the in-between. You have left the old shore, but you have not quite arrived at the new one yet. And no amount of thinking will get you there faster. Only allowing yourself to move through it will. And moving through it means being willing to feel what you have been avoiding, to look at what you have been looking away from, to stop managing the discomfort and actually let yourself be in it long enough to hear what it is trying to tell you. Because discomfort at a threshold is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that something is ready to change. And the body knows. The body is always several steps ahead of the mind at a threshold. It has already registered the truth that the mind is still trying to argue with. And that relentlessness, this restlessness you feel is not always anxiety. That hollowness isn't always depression. That quiet, persistent knowing that something needs to shift is not irrational. It is information. It is your system trying to guide you towards what is actually true for you, if you can slow down enough to listen. And this is why the work I do is also body-based. It is reconnecting with our inner knowing. It is reconnecting with our inner compass that lives within our womb. Because the answer to the threshold questions do not live in our head. They live in the body. They live in our gut feeling, in our womb, in our intuition. In the felt sense of what actually feels like yes and what actually feels like no. In the inner compass that knows which direction is true, even when the mind cannot justify it. In the womb, which holds your deepest knowing and your most honest sense of what you are here to live. So the threshold is not something to rush through. It's not something to get through as quickly as possible. It is something to move through with as much presence as you can bring. Because what you discover is that the passage is sometimes more important than what you're going to even find on the other side. The tools that are required of you, the skills that you are going to learn, this reconnection with yourself is where so much of the medicine and so much of the magic lies. The threshold itself is where you meet yourself, where you come back to what is actually true for you, where you shed what you have been carrying that was never yours to carry. And that process takes time. So if you're at a threshold right now, if you are in that place of knowing something needs to shift, but you don't know quite yet what, I want you to hear this. You do not need to have the answers yet. You do not need to figure it out fast. You don't need to justify the feeling or explain it or make sense of it to the people around you. You just need to be willing to be in it, to stop running from the not knowing and start listening to what it is trying to tell you. Because the answer is already inside you. It always has been. You just need to get quiet enough to hear it. And if you are ready to be supported through this passage,
I have opened the doors to Threshold, my signature self-paced program. And yeah, it was created for exactly this moment. For the woman who knows something needs to shift and is ready to stop thinking her way through it and start feeling her way through it instead. And you can find all of those details on my website. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I see you in the next one. Bye bye, petals.